Harmony.
Senator Risch, thank you for your service to Idaho.
I'll take this. Nice of you to say that.
And secondly, I don't know if you'll know this, I hope you do. Why do we borrow money, our money, from the Federal Reserve when we are the collateral for the money creation? So why isn't the U.S. Treasury creating the money instead of borrowing it from a private institution of bankers?
You know, that's a really good question, and probably Craig was the better guy to answer that, because you get into it shouldn't be done. I'm going to give you that, and that's about all.
Thank you.
You know what? I'll stand here and do this as long as you want, but
Yeah, we just have three other
Let me
people.
do three, and then I got
Okay.
a couple comments I want to make
Kathy.
about what we can do.
Senator Risch, thank you. You know, you said we are Americans, we need the government to get out of the way. So what are 2 or 3 key things that we can focus on and put our energies in Idaho here?
That's a great question, and I'm going to close with that.
Yeah,
okay?
so we'll
let me take 2 more, and I'm going to
Okay,
come back, and that's your
so-
last question right there that I'm going to answer.
Yeah, Sheila. Oh, Sheila, go ahead.
What can Republican legislators do to influence the Republican Party to fight back and point out that Harry Reid hasn't released his tax returns, Obama hasn't released his tax returns, Biden hasn't released his, and they're attacking Romney and trying to make deals with him. If you release 5 years of tax returns, we'll lay off and back up. Baloney. They won't back off. They'll have the 5 years and they'll keep attacking.
Yeah, what you need to do is don't fall into the trap about talking about the tax return. Say, look, just like I did, that doesn't make any difference. I don't care if the guy's never paid any taxes. That makes no difference to me whatsoever. I want to know if he can fix this.
But they make people think that it matters.
Yeah.
Lorette.
Well, to me it seems as a layman that it's much simpler if we have our state elected officials and our legislature know how powerful it is to know their state rights. And so I think that's what gets diluted is when we don't hold our own power and we're always looking for the feds to, you know, say, yes, you're doing it, you just keep feeding us and we'll tell you when you don't have to anymore. That's our fault. So how well do you know Butch Otter, which I'm sure you know him very, very well.
That's a silly question.
So as an advocate for us, how much pressure can you put on Butch Otter to
Well, I'm not
stand
going to
up
put any.
against-
I'm not going to put any pressure on the governor. I'm a federal official, and I just absolutely detest the federal government getting involved in what the state's doing. You know, I've known Butch. We were in the legislature together back in the early '70s, and I've known him since then. And we've been on the same side of battles and on the opposite side of battles. And Butch has got to govern, and you guys need to help him govern. And I'm sure not going to go in. I'm sure not going to get into that.
But respectfully, I have to say though that if you were under the assignment of a governor and legislature instead of the people voting for you, you'd be right there on top of what needed to be. Because you just separated yourself right there and said you're federal, you're not state.
Yeah, I believe in states' rights. I don't think the federal government or any federal official ought to be telling the governors what to do, or for that matter, the legislature what to do. They're all friends of mine. If they ask for my advice, I'd give it to them. But when I was in the state legislature, the last thing I wanted to do was to have my congressman coming down and say, "Now let me tell you how you ought to run the state." My answer to him was, "Well, you want to run the state? Come and run for the state legislature. Then you can run the state." I'm really reluctant to get in that fight. And believe me, I got plenty of stuff to do at the federal level. You know, without.
Yeah. All right. One last question I wanted to ask. We talked a couple months ago, and one of the things that was brought up was obviously what we're going to talk about here in a second.
Yep.
But what we can do. But one thing we did brush up on in that conversation was looking at what the president has done and his tromping all over the Constitution. Has anything that he's done since the last time we've met, in your mind, crossed or reached the threshold of proceedings to get him out of this?
You know, I doubt
Fast
it.
and Furious, Allegra.
You know, I doubt it. It's going to be up to the people to boot him out if we're going to get him out of there, and that's what we got to focus on. Look, to impeach a president, it takes 2/3 vote in the United States Senate, and I can absolutely guarantee you that is not going to happen. You got enough Democrats in there. You know, there's 47 of us Republicans right now and 53 Democrats. You're not going to get to 6-7. We had a vote in the balanced budget amendment. and we got, how many votes were we short, John? 9 votes? It takes 67 votes to amend the U.S. Constitution. And that, to me, that's what saves this country, is a balanced budget amendment. You know, there's almost every state has a balanced budget requirement in their state constitutions. And almost every state, sure, they're struggling, like Idaho is struggling, but their books are in order. They're not in the kind of danger that the federal government is of collapsing, with the possible exception of with the exception of California. But the vast majority of states, of the 47 that have those, are in good shape. I think it's a balanced budget amendment that is going to save us. And the 67 votes is what it takes. And we, even with, I mean, how, and I do my best to understand other people and give them the respect of their own opinions, but how can you vote against a simple proposition that we will balance the budget every year? How can you vote against it? And yet, we couldn't get 67 votes out of the 100 senators to vote for that simple proposition. And there were loopholes in there. For instance, in case of war, if you got a war, you know, obviously you're going to have to go beyond a balanced budget. But I don't know. It is frustrating. So, in answer to your question, it is not going to happen. I mean, it's. Well, look at Bill Clinton, the stuff he did, and they couldn't, you know, they impeached him in the House, but couldn't get the final impeachment to the Senate. So don't focus on that. But I am going to tell you something you should focus on. How can we do better than we're doing?
Yeah.
I run into this all the time with people in Idaho, and they're so frustrated, and they say, "What can I do? I want to do something." And you remember what I told you? Idaho isn't the problem. You heard what John Birch Society say, I got a 100% voting record. I can't go any higher than 100%. So what can be done? Look, the answer is, just like in Idaho, when I was in the Idaho legislature, you need more numbers. It is that simple. You need more numbers. I spoke to a Tea Party group up in Coeur d'Alene in 2010. And they said, well, you know, we don't like this, we don't like that. And I said, what can we do here in Idaho? I said, look, you can almost see the Washington border here. And on the other side of the Washington border, there's a woman by the name of Patty Murray that's running. And she is 180 degrees from everything you people believe in. Get over there and do something about it. It's only 20 miles away. And the problem really wasn't in eastern Washington, it's out on the People's Republic of I-5, you know. West side of the state. But even with that, so what can you do? Well, what I suggested when you guys came in to see me was adopt a race. Okay, adopt a race. It is really important that we get the control of the United States Senate. Unfortunately, you need 60 votes. Not unfortunately, it's what saved this country a number of times. It takes 60 votes to pass anything in the United States Senate, but you can stop anything with 41 votes. But when you're in control, when you're in the majority, you drive the debate. Because one guy, the rules of the Senate are just amazing. One person in the whole world decides what we vote on in the United States Senate. That's Harry Reid. And why? Because there are 53 Democrats there, and they elect the majority leader. If Mitch McConnell was the majority leader, we would be able to twist him to focus on the bills that we want to focus on. So it's really important that in the United States Senate we get the majority. I think we're going to keep the House. I mean, it'd have to be a real wreck for us to lose the House. It'll take us, theoretically, it takes 4 votes for us to take over the Senate, but we're probably going to lose Maine, and so we need 5. So we're adopt a race. Everybody get together and adopt a Senate race. When we met, what I suggested was Nevada, because it's so close to us. Dean Heller's running against a socialist down there. But since then, the thing has really changed. She's gotten into a whole bunch of ethics problems. In fact, the last vote I had on the floor, I said to Dean, I said, "You going home to campaign?" He said, "Yeah, but things are actually looking pretty good." She's up with three TV ads right now, all 3 of them explaining the ethics investigations that she has. Things like, and the numbers, in the polling, his numbers look pretty good. But I'll tell you, there's one that's in play that we should win, because the people are just like us. They vote a little bit Democrat from time to time, but they're just like us, the state of Montana. Yeah. John Tester is, I know John, he's on the airplane with me frequently. The guy's a farmer. If you sit and talk to him, I mean, he's thinking like a person should think. He votes a straight party line. His vote brought Obamacare because they needed every single vote. How he can go home and get elected in Montana saying, I'm the guy that brought you Obamacare. Can you imagine somebody doing that here in Idaho? I mean, they wouldn't stand a snowball's chance, and it should be that way in Montana. The fellow running against him is Danny Reber. They only have one House member because of the population. And Danny Reber represents the whole state. And he's up by about, I've seen it up as high as 4 points. But it's going to be a very close race in Montana. But Montana's one of them that we need. So what can you do? Idaho isn't the problem. Adopt one of those races. Do what you can do to help Danny Reber get elected in Montana. And there's a bunch of other ones. Missouri's going to be a very close race. I think we're going to, after the primary, I think we're going to pick up Wisconsin. Tommy obviously isn't nearly as conservative as what I'd like to see, but man, I'd like to have his vote when we elect a majority leader. And there's a number of others that, believe it or not, we're playing Florida. The incumbent in Florida is behind 3 points against our candidate. So we have some real possibilities out there. But what you can do is, what you ought to do with your groups is get together, vote, study the races, and adopt the race and do whatever you're going to do. But as we all know in those races, sometimes it only takes a handful, to make the difference. Well, listen, you've been very generous sitting here and listening to me for this period of time, and I got to tell you, it is an incredible honor and privilege to represent the people of the state. It takes me about 3 minutes to walk from my office to the floor whenever they call me to vote, and every time I go over there, I walk through those marble halls, and I think about it every time I go over there to vote as to what an honor and privilege it is to vote. Maybe that's why I got 100%, because I think about the people back home, and I think about how that vote is going to affect people in Idaho. God bless you. Thank you for having me.